Good afternoon, everyone. I am Premnath, Associate Professor, Department of Ophthalmology, Chettinad Academy of Research and Education. I am going to moderate today's session on preferred practice patterns in ophthalmology during COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we have with us two renowned personnel from Shankara Eye Foundation India to walk us through the various practices pertaining to ophthalmology in current scenario. Dr. Kaushik Murali and Dr. Geeta Duleri. Dr. Kaushik Murali is alumni of Shankara Eye Hospital. He has done his MBBS from Kasturba Medical College. He has completed his MBBS at Kasturba Medical College and DNB Ophthalmology at Shankara Eye Hospital and his pediatric ophthalmology at Medical Research Foundation, Chennai. He is also an alumni of INSEAD, which is rated among the top business schools in the world. He has also completed a course on strategic non-profit management at Harvard Business School. He is responsible for the medical operations across the hospitals of the Shankara Eye Foundation India, which is today among the nation's largest community eye care provider. In addition, he has been championing the quality assurance. Under Shankara Academy of Vision, over 400 eye care personnel are trained every year. He has been recognized with various state, national, and international awards in ophthalmology. Dr. Kaushik is part of the scientific committee of Vision 2020 India and a member of National Management Team of Confederation of Indian Industry Young Indians. He was part of Indian delegation to the G20 Young Entrepreneur Alliance in 2018 and also led the India delegation to establish the India-Israel Young Leader Forum. Dr. Geeta, Quality Manager, Shankara Eye Foundation India, has been associated with the organization for the past 8 years. A postgraduate in hospital administration, she has taken on quality assurance, implementation in healthcare organizations as an area of expertise. She is a certified professional for quality implementation in hospitals. In addition, she has also undergone training as an internal auditor for ISO 9001-2015. For the past few years, she has been instrumental in ensuring the implementation of various quality initiatives, including design thinking at Shankara hospitals. All hospitals of Shankara are certified NABH hospitals. She has received, on behalf of the organization, awards for quality implementation, including the IMC Ramakrishna Bajaj Milestone Merit Award, ET News Award for Healthcare Excellence Quality, Consortium of Accredited Hospital Award for Continuous Quality Improvement. From our side, Chettinad Hospital and Research Institute is one of the constituent colleges of Chettinad Academy of Research and Education. Ours is a tertiary medical college teaching hospital with an intake of 250 undergraduate students per year. And from our department point of view, we have 5 postgraduate students per year. At our department, we have Dr. Stephen Sudhakar, Professor, MS DNB, Fellow Ratan Tata from Shankar Nethralaya is heading the department, followed by Dr. Shankar, Dr. Rajkumari, and Dr. Siddharam Janti, all are alumni from Regional Institute of Ophthalmology, Chennai. Myself, alumni of Command Hospital, Air Force, Bangalore, and a clinical fellow from Narayana Nethralaya, Bangalore, followed by Dr. Adnan Mateen, Dr. Sinisha Pal, Dr. Kritika, alumni of Shankara Eye Foundation, Dr. Kirtana Elarasu, Dr. Gayatri, and followed by our postgraduates. We'll have a presentation by the team of Dr. Kaushik and Dr. Geeta, followed by interaction between us. Over to you, sir, Dr. Kaushik.
Thank you. I also wish to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Meena Gopinath, who's head of our glaucoma services at Shankara Eye Hospital, Bangalore, and heads our paramedical training program at Bangalore. She is also part of our core team setting up protocols for our operation theatre protocols. So I've invited her also to be a part of the discussion. So thank you, Dr. Premnath. It is an honor and privilege to be here presenting what we have tried to establish at Shankara as a part of our protocols in making sense of the COVID-19 and beyond. So as we look to restart our entire process system. So in the next about 20-25 minutes between me and Dr. Geeta, we'll walk you through our OPD and OT protocol. Again, I'm not very aware of what stage of restart of work you are at Chettinad Hospital. Being a multi-speciality medical college, I assume that a lot of this would probably already be factored in. We are a single specialty eye hospital, so a lot of our protocols may be different in your setting. We would encourage you to pick those that are relevant to your work, and then so the first thing that we've learned as a part of our work at Shankara is the fact that we need to accept that we don't have all the answers. So it is very, very clear that this is an evolving situation where every day the guidelines are changing, so you cannot be very rigid about it. We don't completely know about the virus, about its effect on the eye, whether it even spreads through the eye. There are multiple contradictory reports, but we just have to keep moving. The second thing that this has necessitated is a change in behavior. So we as human beings are usually at two extremes. Either we think we are God, nothing will affect us, assuming that tomorrow we are going to pop off. So this requires us to take a middle path where our behavior is nuanced to the guidelines that are coming out. We change certain practices from social distancing to wearing PPEs, and also we need to make sure that this behavior translates to our patients and their attendants. Because the entire world is watching how we as healthcare professionals behave. So this becomes very, very important. It's literally as if the spotlight is on us. The last thing that COVID has done is it has initiated a extremely wide collaboration. So today we have organizations get onto similar platforms where we are sharing our best practices. We're open to learning from other organizations in terms of what they are doing. This is something which is unprecedented, and I think is a silver lining thanks to this epidemic. The second thing it has taught us is the necessity to communicate. So you need to communicate both internally and externally. You need to communicate internally so that your staff are confident about the protocols that you've established, and they show that confidence when they're handling patients. And you need to communicate to your patients saying that yes, there is a pandemic, but we know what has to be done and we are safe to resume operation. So this broadly is what we have looked to achieve. This on three areas. First, on personal protection, where we've looked at task-specific protection. So we've not had a one-size-fits-all. Based on the activity being carried out, we've kind of kept the PPE relevant to that. The second that we've looked at is the environment, the hospital environment in terms of both our OPD area as well as the operation theatre area, ensuring that hygiene is a little extra as well as that the areas are well ventilated. So that has been very critical. The third thing that we've looked at is regulating the patient and the foot flow into the hospital. So we've rostered our staff into 2 shifts so that we are able to increase the hours of operation and at the same time reduce the number of hours each employee has to come into work. So we work 2 shifts today from 8 to 2 and 2 to 8. So this allows our patient to be spread out through the day and it reduces the footfalls that are coming. And of course, other practices that we've been. So I'll invite Geeta to walk you through the OPD.
Very good afternoon to everyone. I'm Dr. Geeta here, the Quality Manager for Shankara Eye Foundation India. Glad to be sharing some of the best practices that we have been following here at Shankara. So I'll just run through what protocols we have brought in our OPD. So what we have made sure is we have a single entry for all the patients and attenders. And every patient, every attender and every staff, whoever is coming in, walking in the hospital, we make sure that the temperature is being checked and we make sure that they do not have any COVID suggestive symptoms. So once the temperature has been checked, we just see whether the patients, in case if they have any conjunctivitis or any foreign body. If no, then we send them to the vision check or else the refraction or the other specialities and then opticals. In case if the patients, they have any suggestive symptoms of conjunctivitis or foreign body, then we directly send them to the triage area. And after the triage area, the patient, whatever the medications are required, we try and see that we provide them the medications there itself. If it is not available in the triage area, then we ask one of our sisters to make sure that they get it from the pharmacy and hand it over to the patients. At the end of the whole protocol, we make sure that does a hand rub and only then they walk out of the hospital. In case if during the initial check, if the people or any of the patients, if they have any symptoms of fever or any COVID suggestive symptoms, then we directly ask them to go visit to a local COVID center. So this COVID-19, it has changed our world. We have brought in a lot of protocols in place to remove all the fear and uncertainties that are evident. So I'll quickly walk you all through a video which we have just combined to show you all what protocols we have brought in place. So there are a lot of changes that we have brought in the workplace, right from ensuring that there is social distancing. After the temperature check, we also ensure that there is floor marking that has been done in all the areas of the hospital wherever the patients are accessible. And we make sure that all of them are wearing the PPEs. So these are all the task-specific PPEs that we have provided to all the employees. There are separate PPEs that the triage area personnel are using, that the OPD staff are using. For all of the management, also management staff, we are making sure that they wear a mask. So we ask the patient to sign a consent and a declaration form. There is a regular disinfection that is done in all the patient accessible areas. We make sure that we give the appointments to the patients prior to stand under the patient. We make sure that regular cleaning is happening. We have told the staff to wear the face shields to prevent the droplet infection. So social distancing, we have to make sure there are PPEs that all the staff are wearing, even the patients, we make sure that they are wearing the mask. So these are the floor markings that you can see that we have done at a lot of places inside the hospital, right from the entrance, and then when they are moving towards the registration. Also in areas like pharmacy and cash counter, there is floor distancing that has the floor markings have been done. You can also see in the areas like waiting lounges, we have done some markings to ensure that the patients are being seated in those areas which have been marked to ensure that there is a social distancing that is there. Even in the opticals, we have made sure that only those many tables and chairs have been kept so that we make sure that there is not much crowd. In cafeteria also, we have removed all the extra tables and the chairs to make sure that there is appropriate distance in between the people who are there. Consulting rooms, we have made sure that the PPEs as relevant they are being used, and the attendant chairs are removed so that there is some extra space that is available inside the consulting rooms. At every drinking water facility, we have made sure that there's a hand sanitizer that is kept beside the drinking water facility. We ask the patients or the attenders to make sure that they sanitize their hands before they drink the water. And triage area is extremely important. So we have to identify the triage area in that it is in such a place so that it is well ventilated and it is open. We can provide the medicines there itself. So this is another video that we have here that is of a hand sanitizer dispenser. So both these hand sanitizer dispensers, we have made it in-house. The one that you can see on the left side, it costs approximately about 1,000 rupees, less than 1,000 rupees. The one that is there on the right hand side, it costs approximately of 150 rupees. So this is something that we have done in-house. It makes sure that we don't have to touch our hands to use the sanitizer. So this is something nice that we can try and see if we can make it in-house. And sanitizers, we have made it available at all the patient and staff accessible areas, right from the entrance, in the triage area, at every nursing station, near the water dispensers, and in the cafeteria as well. So we have to make sure that in all the areas of the hospital, wherever it is possible, we will have to keep the doors open, the windows open to ensure that there is appropriate ventilation. And in case if we have to use air conditioner in any areas, please make sure that the filter, it has been cleaned and it has been disinfected. We'll have to make sure that there is minimum furniture that is available and only one attender we will have to allow in every in the consulting rooms and in the dilation areas. You can just ask the staff to use the earbuds if at all they have to touch the eyelids, and immediately discard it after use. And also what we are doing is we are not making use of NCTs, and you can ask the staff to, in case if there is an attender who is available with the patient, the attender can hold the head and assist the patient. So we can ask the staff not to do that in case if an attendant is available inside the consulting room. And we can also make sure that the conversation is at a minimum, only whatever is necessary we'll have to communicate to them. And we can space out the reviews as far as possible.
So coming to the diagnostics part, again, the diagnostics remain as we were doing it before. Only thing is, between two tests, you need to make sure that you clean the chin rest, forehead rest, the handles, tables, and surface with 70% isopropyl alcohol, and you allow it to dry. The computer keyboard and monitors, either you can wrap it in a cling wrap and keep wiping it with the tissue soaked in isopropyl alcohol, or you can even directly wipe it with isopropyl alcohol. The only disadvantage of wiping it directly is some of the lettering may go away with repeated use. The external body of any equipment can again be cleaned either with isopropyl alcohol, or alternately you could use Lysol. When it comes to specific equipment, when it comes to a HFA, except for the inside of the dome, the rest of the outside can be cleaned with 70% isopropyl alcohol. None of the manufacturers are telling us how to clean the inside of the dome, which means that it becomes critical for the patient to wear a mask whenever you're doing any visual field examination. And between two patients, it is good to give about 20 odd minutes to allow any aerosols that may be there to settle down, because you really cannot clean the inside of the dome. And again, keep the door open so that it is ventilated. Generally, our HFA rooms are very small rooms. As far as possible, keep it open. If a repeat test is required, again, defer it if the patient is not able to give any reliable readings. For the OCT and laser, again, we've come up with an innovation in terms of how we can protect it. I'll run you through a short video. Essentially, we use a cling wrap to cover it, and that can be wiped down. For FFAs, again, you cannot, you do it only in cases where it is unavoidable. The body can be wiped with, the body and the lens can be wiped with 70% isopropyl alcohol. For your auto-ref, for your NCTs, if you have an optical biometry, you can only clean the body with 70% isopropyl alcohol. The lens should not be cleaned. So that is something you have to be very careful about. This video has an inbuilt voice as a part of it. It just shows you what we've done to protect our OCTs and laser. I'll just play this short video now.
In today's world, social distancing has become the norm. But sometimes, being clingy can also help us to prevent spread of COVID-19 in an eye hospital. When the patient's head is on chin rest, the nose of the patient is in close proximity to the front surface and the lens of the machines like OCT and lasers. Hence, aerosols can settle as fomite on the lens surface and possibly can get transmitted to other patients on subsequent examinations. Here we show an innovative use of cling wrap to prevent spread of COVID-19. Take adequate length of the Klingon wrap to cover the front surface including the lens and the sensors of the machine, attaching it to the side walls. The entire process of covering hardly takes 5 minutes to complete. Make sure that there are no folds in front of the lens. The covering can be easily cleaned between patients and changed at the end of the day. As you can see, the scan quality is not affected. This picture shows a comparison of image quality obtained in an undilated patient without and with the front cover. For cleaning, isopropyl alcohol can be used. Take a clean tissue paper and spray isopropyl alcohol on it and clean all around, especially the area covering the lens and the sensors. We can see that the cover is absolutely clear with no contamination or fogging. In a similar way, you can use a cling wrap to cover your Pascal laser delivery systems. Just make sure there are no bubbles or folds in the front surface. On comparing the laser marks with and without the cling wrap, we found that the ones obtained after putting the cling wrap were slightly smaller in size, but we did not find any significant difference in the clinical scenario. For cleaning, isopropyl alcohol can be used. Just spray isopropyl alcohol in a clean tissue paper and clean gently all over. Use gloves while doing so. A similar method can also be used to cover your YAG capsulotomy laser machine. Here too we observed that the spot size was slightly smaller in size, but again it was not clinically significant. Sometimes, to overcome complex conditions like COVID, simple innovations are sufficient.
So this is about the OPD part of it. Just quickly moving on to the IP part of it. Here, essentially, when we are counseling the patient, we again reiterate the fact that they need to come in only with one attendant, and that both of them need to necessarily wear a mask when they come in. During the counseling process, our counselor wears a face shield, a mask, and a glove, and this counseling is again done in a well-ventilated room. We advise the patient not to travel, and we also kind of warn them saying we may cancel the procedure if they end up having symptoms or history of contact that is noted on the day of the surgery. If any test, diagnostic, or fitness is done elsewhere, we ask them to email or WhatsApp the report to us, and they bring the hard copy on the day of the surgery. One other trick that we've incorporated is we started advising the patient to practice lying down at home by putting a little handkerchief on their face for about 15 to 20 minutes so that they get used to the concept of wearing a mask and further having an eye drape over it during a cataract or a retinal surgery. So this has kind of helped in increasing the compliance. When they come in, any pre-op investigation we try and complete on the same day as the diagnostic test. AIOS has suggested a chest X-ray for patients with COVID symptoms, but since we are in eye hospitals, we are avoiding patients with COVID symptoms currently. So we are not doing chest X-ray as a routine here. On the day of the surgery, again, a self-declaration is signed. The patients are admitted in a staggered manner. Again, I will run you through a short video to show you what we are doing as a part of the inpatient process here. So again, the patient and the attender undergo thermal screening. They sign another consent and declaration saying that they have not been in contact with the COVID positive or not visited a containment area. After that, the routine admission procedures that you've always done gets done. Your admission notes, your consent form gets done. The patient changes into our OT clothes. In addition to the surgical cap and foot cover, they wear an additional surgical mask, typically a 3-ply. They wheel into the OT. We apply povidone iodine. After the surgery, again, we ask them to continue medication. We again reinforce the need for hygiene, and then we review them. All surfaces that the patient and attender may have come in contact with gets disinfected following the patient getting discharged. All the linen that they have used goes in a closed bin to the laundry, gets put in 1% hypochlorite, and then goes through the standard laundry protocol. If you have shut down your OT and you're looking to restart your OT, this is something that we did across our Shankara hospitals before restart. First and foremost, your air handling units need to be cleaned and disinfected. You may need to repeat your microbial surveillance, the 3 cultures negative, because this is considered to be a long shutdown because you shut down for about 40 days. Some of our hospitals, we've continued doing retinal surgeries and emergency procedures, but wherever we've had a shutdown, we've undergone this. Make sure that your OT, positive pressure, temperature, humidity are working. There is a scavenging system that you need to set up for your anesthesia workstation. Again, I'll show you a short video to describe what we have done. Most of us use central gas manifolds, so confirm there are no leaks, confirm that there is a gas there, that the monitors are working well. Make sure your laundry is working fine. You need to change phaco tips between surgeries now. So make sure you have adequate consumables with you. And also you may need to move out of linen drapes to disposable plastic drapes. And you need specific PPEs for the operation theatre. In the block room, again, it's minimal personnel that are allowed. We would prefer to use subtenance anesthesia. We again minimize vocalization. The couch is disinfected again with 70% isopropyl alcohol or with Lysol, whatever is available. You could also use 1% sodium hypochlorite. Only thing you need to be careful about the sodium salt you're using, because then the dilution varies to achieve this 1% solution. In the operation theatre, again, it is minimum staff. We are a teaching hospital too, but we are limiting the number of people who are in the OT. So currently it is limited to the surgeon, the scrub sister, one circulating nurse, if it's a general anesthesia and anesthetist, and one assistant. They wear the appropriate PPE. In between cases, we are doing a complete surface disinfection. We clean the floor and all surfaces with 4% aldacel, which is a mix of glutaraldehyde and other disinfectants in it. Clean out all the linen that is there. The entire team that is present during the surgery is recorded. Contact tracing if needed. The cleaning takes about 10 to 15 minutes. This also allows about 4 to 6 air changes. So if there is any ambient droplet, that also gets diluted before the next patient comes in. We are avoiding as much of linen as possible. End of the day, we do what we call in our language a deep cleaning protocol, where including the walls, the AC vents, and all equipment are completely cleaned and disinfected. All laundry used again is shifted in a closed drawer. The surgeons and the staff wear an additional 3-ply mask to the standard multi-layer mask that we are using currently in the OPD. So this prevents any fogging that happens and gives some amount of additional protection in terms of sterility. They wear a surgical mask, they change it to the OT scrubs. In the OPD, most of us today wear a pair of scrubs when we're seeing patients. This is largely to protect ourselves when we go back home, where there is all the science behind that. The block room I've already shared with you what we are sharing. The only difference is that the block doctor wears a face shield so that if inadvertently the patient coughs, it protects him to a large extent from any droplet. The PPE, the surgical scrub assistant wears an additional gown underneath the autoclavable mask. The anesthetist and the GA assistant wear a complete coverall currently. We're also looking at evolving protocols. The staff who are posted in the autoclave or the CSSD should wear a face shield because whenever they're washing the instruments, there is an aerosolization that is possible. Again, they're educated to remove it when they're handling the autoclave so that the heat from the autoclave does not affect it. Most of these shields are made of polycarbonate, but some of them are made from recycled plastics. So we are not very sure of the quality. So it is better that they are advised to remove it when they're removing the pins from the autoclave. Again, we encourage minimum staff. Whatever additional consumables that are required between cases are kept outside the operation theatre so that there is no cross-contamination. So minimal manpower, so trolleys like this that we used to keep earlier should no longer be kept in the OT because again you want to reduce any possible cross-contamination. This video is again a small innovation that a biomedical team came up with. So the anesthesia workstation has a small outlet where gases get expired. We've tried to collect it using the regular suction apparatus. So what we've done is we've used the regular reducers that are available with the anesthesia machine and connected to the suction bottle where we filled 1% hypochlorite. And the second bottle, we let the run off to the return duct. The suction machine is kept off. So we're just using the two chambers of the suction apparatus machine. So this usually is available in every operation theatre of ours. This reduces any contamination of the ambient air. So the anesthetists and the team that are handling the GAs feel that much more safe. In recovery, again, post-op dressing, the patient is advised to come directly from the discharge summary and instructions are given by the staff wearing face shield. For the GA recovery, again, the staff wears a mask. Patient is placed on a bed with guardrails. Any oxygen that they use, the mask should be clean. The monitor probes are cleaned with 70% IPA. High touch areas again have to be cleaned every 2 hours and between patients. Post-op review, we've not been very successful with teleconsults because we don't really get a quality image of the eye. So where we are very confident, we ask the patient to kind of call us in and tell us everything is okay. Otherwise, we ask them to come in, but we fast track them. They see it quickly and send down. So we also advise them to stock up on their post-operative medication supply so that it reduces the number of times that the patient has to go to the pharmacy. Plus, God forbid, the patient becomes COVID positive and goes into quarantine, then he has these medicines available with him to carry with him. So supply chain issues are no longer there. This is especially relevant when you are operating on patients with glaucoma. For cleaning and disinfection, again, we've kept it very simple. So we use Lysol for all surfaces. It's 1 capsule in 4 liters. Again, in Lysol, you have a cleaning solution and a disinfectant. So we use a disinfectant. This has been cleared by the EPA USA as being effective against SARS-CoV. This is the material all our housekeeping are know how to handle, so it removes the hassle of having to prepare every day. We use hypochlorite currently only to disinfect our appellation tonometers. Again, like I mentioned, we use Lysol largely. For most other medical equipment, we use 70% alcohol. Again, we need to dilute it in. Why do we use 70% alcohol and we don't use a Sterilium to clean surfaces? Most hand rubs have certain other additions to make them skin friendly. These leave deposits on your optics. So it is always good to have a freshly prepared 70% alcohol when you're cleaning any optical surface. So like Dr. Geeta was mentioning, these are the broad parameters and principles that we've used. We've incorporated social distancing largely. We make sure that PPE use is appropriate, that it is evidence-based rather than emotion-based. We've looked to adhere to whatever guidelines are available. We've looked to regulate ourselves. We've minimized the number of people who are there. There has been regular training programs that we have conducted. We make sure that people keep surfaces and their hands clean. So that's pretty much what we wanted to present. What I've also discussed with Dr. Prem is that if you're interested, we could share our protocols with you. But go through that, and if you have questions, we could answer them. Again, I invited Dr. Meena to be a part of this discussion, so we could answer any questions that you may have specifically from this presentation.
Thank you, sir. It was an exhaustive presentation, covered almost all areas. So I have some queries, sir. So you are showing about the periodic disinfection of OPD area. So how periodically we are disinfecting the OPD areas, sir?
Hi, Dr. Prem. Dr. Meena
Good evening, ma'am. Can you recognize me?
Yeah, definitely. When Dr. Kaushik told me itself, I thought I know Dr. Prem very well.
Yes.
So the OPD disinfection, like in the presentation itself, we have shown that we assign seat numbers for each patient. So if the D5 is a seat number allotted to a particular patient, till the patient goes out of the hospital, he is expected to sit in the same seat. So that patient area, the seats are generally, that particular seat is clean once the patient goes out of the system. Otherwise, the entire OPD area, every 2 hours, we clean the doorknobs, all the areas, the floor, and all the areas which is frequently touched by the patient. But after every patient goes out of your consultation chamber, you have to clean up the patient chair, the slit lamp, and the door handle and the areas wherever touched by the patient.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing that we've started doing to give confidence to patients is we use a public address system. So every 2 hours, there's an announcement made to the housekeeping staff saying, please clean, it is time for you to clean all surfaces. So for all the patients and attenders who are sitting in the OPD, they also know that, oh, they're doing some special cleaning.
Yeah,
so what of it, you have to do some gimmick sort of for the patients to also get confidence.
Yeah, it would be reassuring for the patient also.
So that is very important.
Okay. And regarding quarantine and isolating self-isolation, how are we doing it, sir? Are we following any particular protocols for quarantining the doctors and other healthcare once they come to OPD, or after that, are they quarantined for some period, or what is the practice being?
So unlike your setup where you probably will have COVID patients also being handled, we are a specialty eye hospital. So our assumption is that with thermal scanning and declaration, well, yes, there is some faith issue there. We've still not enforced the requirement to have the Arogya Setu app for all patients and attenders, but I think you are well within your right to insist on that. From what I have been a part of multiple other discussions, if a patient does not have an Arogya Setu app, you are well within your rights to deny treatment or refuse to examine him. So that is one part of it. What our policy says is that there are basically 4 scenarios. One, the patient, our staff is found to have a fever or found to have some symptoms of COVID when he reports into work. So like the patients are screened, every staff is also screened for temperature when they walk in. The second thing that can happen is he comes into work and suddenly falls in. The third thing is he comes from a containment area. The fourth is he tests COVID positive. So for each one of these situations, we have a different protocol. If on landing up at the hospital during thermal screening, we find he has a temperature, he is advised to go back home. Every staff actually fills in a Google form before they leave home, which is a self-declaration form saying, I'm okay, I don't have symptoms, I have not visited a containment zone. Only after that, they are expected to leave home. So it's a very simple form, 4 questions that they fill out. Again, it is to keep reminding them that they should not keep going to containment areas. But despite that, they come and we find a temperature, we ask them to go back. If the fever persists beyond 2 days, that's a current protocol in various states, we follow that. They go to the fever clinic and based on the advice of the fever clinic, they can get a RT-PCR. If they come from a containment zone, again, if it is somebody from the family, again, the containment zone is very clear in terms of who is at a high risk. So the Arogya Setu app itself will change color to say that they are at risk. If not, if there's somebody in their family who has a fever and symptoms, we again ask them to not report it to work for a week. The last category, if they're COVID positive, currently, touch wood, we've not faced that scenario, but we have a flowchart in terms of what needs to be done. They would be advised to go visit the fever center or go visit the designated center. And we have a process in place where we can find out who their primary contacts were. So not everybody in the hospital has to go into quarantine. So those who spend a significant amount of time with them. So CDC defines it as somebody who spent more than 6 hours in close proximity. So the way we've broken up our shifts and broken up our processes, we don't foresee too many people coming into close proximity. So that particular set of people who come in contact with them will be advised into self-quarantine. We've also created something called as a message map, because you don't want the whole hospital to go into panic. So what should the unit head communicate to the member who's gone positive? What should he communicate to those who are a primary contact? What should he communicate to the rest of the team? Media will definitely come. What should he communicate to the media? So we've created draft messages and we've created clear protocols saying who should communicate. So it is good to be safe. At the same time, we should not panic. So it's a great idea to plan out every eventuality. Beyond a point, you have to accept saying not every answer you have.
Yeah, that's it, sir. Yeah, but we need to earmark each individual for each task, because otherwise it will become a chaos.
So we, like I mentioned, so that is the reason we divided our entire team into 2 shifts. So that way, even if one entire team goes into quarantine or one specialty specialist goes into quarantine, there is somebody else who can plug in later. So that is the idea with which we divided it into 2 teams. So it's like a movie theater. So team A comes in at 8 o'clock. The patients who come in the morning shift have to be cleared out of the hospital by 1:45 or 1:50. There's a quick cleaning that gets done. This entire team moves out. At 2 o'clock, the next team moves in. And the next set of patients are allowed into the hospital or leaving. So we borrowed it completely out of how movie theaters work. So between 2 shows, you land up early also, you're told, please wait, we are cleaning. So our patients are understanding. We've not really had anybody create a big fuss about it.
Okay, sir. Currently at our hospital, actually, we are following 2 days work and 1 day quarantine. And the cycle continues. So we have divided into 4 teams, 3 teams to be precise. And then we rotate, not on hours basis as you are practicing at your center. So we are practicing on day basis.
No, I think you will have to plan it based on each work location. So even in our own chain of hospital, there are certain networks where till 8 o'clock in the evening, there is no bus because it's a semi-urban area. So you have to nuance it. The whole concept is to have 2 independent teams so that you have that backup plan in place.
Exactly. Dr. Stephen?
Yeah, good afternoon, Dr. Taufik. I'm Dr. Stephen, HOD of Ophthalmology. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So it was a good talk. One doubt I'm having is regarding the refraction rule. in refraction you put a trial frame. So how many trial frames you should have, because it is very much close proximity to the nose, each trial frame, and when a patient breathes, invariably is going to breathe when the patient is going to be put on a trial frame. So how much trial frame we should have, and moreover refractionists are not doctors also, so we have to instruct them, but still they are not doctors, they may not know, but we'll instruct them. But what is your take on that? How many trial frame we should have, and what is the amount of refraction patients we can do per day?
So currently, what we have done is we have provided trial frames to every optometrist. They use 30% isopropyl alcohol between patients between the trial frame and the lenses. So that way there are no scratches or smudges. When you're cleaning any of these with isopropyl alcohol, it is important that you don't spray it directly. Because again, you create an aerosol from that space. So you spray the isopropyl alcohol onto a tissue paper, clean the surface and throw it away. So 2 trial frames are more than enough. If your volume is not that high, even 1 trial frame is enough. You just clean it. By the time you write the history, the isopropyl alcohol would have evaporated and you can use the same trial frame. So it is just a question of scheduling that you do. What has also kind of helped is, so again you play on psychology. If you tell a person saying, you tell your optometrist, hey, it is good for you to do this, it is unlikely they will do it because it's a hassle for them. But instead, if you tell them, boss, if you don't do this, you are likely to get COVID from the patient because you're touching the trial frame. You get COVID, you're going to go on 1 week quarantine, your salary is not going to be paid. 100% they'll do it. So telling people what they will lose invariably motivates them to do it. So that has been the large messaging that we've done. So we've always told people what they will lose out. Saying you will put your family at risk, you're going back home, so you better wear a mask. So we will dispense masks to the family members. Saying please make sure your family wears so that they also don't contract.
So maybe 5 minutes gap between the 2 patients may be adequate after cleaning. More than enough with isopropyl alcohol, the lens and also the frame.
And the patient has to wear a mask. So
Patient is you're not allowing anybody without a mask inside. They have put a notice also outside, so nobody enters without a mask. But most of them, some patients are wearing a cloth mask. Is that sufficient, or they need to have a surgical mask while doing refraction?
So we are insisting on a surgical mask only for our patients that we are operating on. So there we are providing them a fresh surgical mask before they're wheeled into the OT. So whatever mask they're wearing, they wear it into the IP room or wherever else. Everywhere else, we allow them to wear the mask that they're walking in with, because there is a cost involved. So today, all masks have become something that we used to buy for 1 rupee, you are getting it for between 10 to 14 rupees. The second thing is we are asking the patient to wear a mask so that if they sneeze, it doesn't kind of fly out. So that is where the entire premise of the patient wearing a mask. We all are wearing multi-layered mask that kind of protects us. So if the enhanced protection is at the healthcare worker side. So whatever mask they're wearing is good enough. Even a neck warmer is good enough. We currently are not allowing them to tie hankies and come in. We are asking them to buy a mask. So most of them are again compliant. So even the attendant has to wear a mask. That's the only thing.
That is sure. We are making sure the attendant is also wearing mask. One more thing is, when you are doing a surgery, we use oxygen through nasal prongs. Routinely, till before the COVID era, we used to have a nasal prongs and we'll operate. But right now, is it necessary? We don't need oxygen, but still, is it advisable or it is not advisable? Nasal prongs oxygen.
So we've been again there are 2, 3. I think I skipped the video for the evacuation system. So you'll find it on our YouTube channel. All these innovations we've pushed it up. It's Shankara Academy of Vision. So you can look up the channel. So whatever we've done, we've kind of posted it on that. So you can incorporate it. There is something called a heat and moisture exchange filter. It's about 110 rupees a filter. For every patient you need, or for every patient you need 2 filters that need to be put into the Boyle's machine. So that kind of prevents, when it's a closed system or an open system, it acts as a filter from that standpoint. So if you're having an oxygen mask, that may be better than a prong, because you can always clean the oxygen mask using isopropyl alcohol. Here as a routine, we don't honestly use a mask. We did come across a video where they use an ambu bag system with 2 inlet and outlet valve with filters, but we've not been able to lay our hands on those filters. So we're trying to create that kind of a mechanism also. With the nasal probes, the problem is it goes into the nose. So either you have to use a fresh one for every patient and dispose it. Cleaning theoretically should be okay, but again, they're a little uncomfortable.
Aerosol also.
What you
Aerosol
should
generation.
never ETO it, because ETO will always leave residue, and that can cause a lot of problems. So you never ETO any of these nasal masks on your intubation thing. You have to make sure it's more than adequately aerated, if at all you're doing.
One more doubt, sir. We usually used to wash our OT once a week, I mean on Saturdays, and we will fumigate it on a daily basis. But currently, do you advocate to wash it on daily basis along with fumigation, if you do a case?
So we never fumigate. So we've not had fumigation as a part of our protocol for the last 6 years. We only fumigate when we are setting up a new hospital or we are changing the air handling unit to clean the ducts. So we only do surface disinfection with 4% aldehyde. I think Nina's.
Yeah, we use Albracin for cleaning. So we clean it as a 3-bucket system basically. The first bucket will contain any kind of a soap oil you can use, and the second container will contain water and Albracin, and the third one is a plain water. So we can use it that every day at the end of the day. But now because of this COVID, we are cleaning and after each patient, even if it is a cataract, after each patient, we all come out, we change the entire table, entire linen is removed out, and the floor is clean just with 1 bucket with Albracin. But at the end of the day, you have to do a cleaning. And end of the week, as you mentioned, on a Saturday, we do a little more deeper cleaning. In the sense, the store's things are removed and rearranged, the store's cupboards are clean. All that happens on Saturday. But end of the day, definitely the walls and the trolleys and the floor has to be clean. But in between the patients, it's only minimal cleaning, like microscope we clean with 70% isopropyl alcohol and all the trolleys, surfaces and the floor.
Anything about DCR? Either you are doing it in your hospital, the same, or you are avoiding it? DCR, DCT?
Avoiding DCR, so that has been the all our centers has taken. We are handling certain globe ruptures and certain other entities. There again, we are following the ICMR protocol in terms of the PCR screening. Currently, we are trying to postpone DCRs, but where it is kind of an emergency requirement for some reason, what has been proposed is to do a DCT and subsequently a re-intubation after counseling the patients.
Thank you.
Is there a change in number of patients operated per day, sir?
So it will end up becoming indirectly because between 2 patients you have to mop the floor and you allow about 10 minutes. So if you look at the AIOS protocols, they mandated 20 minutes between GAs. There is no mention of the time that you need to take in any local or a topical anesthesia patient. But our protocol here, we are cleaning the entire floor and allowing about 6 air changes. So on an average, we wait for about 15 minutes so that the entire air in the OT kind of gets cleaned. It is just from a psychological standpoint, more than anything.
Okay, but there will be some increase in the cost incurred because of these cleaning agents. So, has it changed the total package for the patient?
We have revised our packages. So even our OPD cost, what we anticipate to be a projected OPD flow for the rest of the year, we would probably be spending around 110 rupees per patient on every PPE and the floor cleaning and all of it. Again, the masks that we use are not the N95s that I see some of your colleagues using, but we use a multi-layered mask which is reusable. So our costs are probably lower than the cost that you would be incurring. Because in your case, probably every 5 days the mask will need to be changed. So you will need to work out your economics and see how much the patient can use. We've not really had any of our new patients complain in terms of increased costing because honestly, ophthalmology OPD rates are among the lowest in the industry. Some of our review patients have questioned us, but we've again taken the effort to explain to them saying that a 2 rupee glove now costs 18 rupees or a 1 rupee mask. They themselves have bought surgical masks, so they know the cost escalations that have happened. So they are quite acceptable. The last 3 months of us running our OPD in Bangalore, about 4 patients may have complained to us about the increase in cost.
That is one thing we need to explain the patient beforehand.
Yeah, you will have to communicate. So the floor markings again for social distancing, you can ask somebody to say stand apart. But a lot of these visible markings allows a patient to suddenly see a dramatic change. So our registration area, we've removed all waiting chairs. So they just walk in and stand in a queue. We've left a few chairs for elderly people to sit down. So they need to see a big change. So there is a table at entrance, the thermal screening, they have this non-contact foot operated sanitizer. So suddenly they see that everything is changed. So we again told them saying 1/3 of our chairs have disappeared. So we used to have about 200 or 3-seaters. Today we have only about 73 seaters. So every 2-hour cycle, we know we can see about 70 sets of patients. So that's how we function.
So one more question to Dr. Kaushik. US is an isolated, specialty eye hospital, but we are into a general hospital, one among the departments, and we are exposed to many patients, maybe 1,200 patients OPD comes in our hospital. And our labor ward also are near, after our OPD, only labor ward, ENT OPD is our neighbor. So there are many likely chance that we can be exposed to carriers. May not be the patient, that because every patient is screened in the entrance for thermal scan, but still 80% we know they are carriers, asymptomatic carriers. So what is your point for us if you find any extra thing that we have to be much more cautious because we are in a general sector?
So my only suggestion to you would be change out of your street clothes into some kind of scrubs so that at least you don't carry back the infection home. So wear a separate set. You could even carry in a set of clothes you wear during your hospital hours and change it to a fresh set before you go back home. That would be one thing. Currently, some of my colleagues also visit other hospitals for ROP screening. So these are things that we said ethically we will not stop. So all through the lockdown, we've been continuing to do all of this. So continued our retinal lasers, we continued our retinal surgeries, we continued ROP screenings. So when they're traveling out, they wear a face mask, they wear additionally a face shield. So that what it is worth, somebody suddenly coughs on the corridor, you don't want that to come. So wearing a face shield, almost every medical rep will come up and give you a face shield. They are not very expensive to lay your hands on.
We already got, sir. We already got some.
Exactly. So I think Micro Labs and a lot of them are giving. For 50 to 100 rupees, you will get a reasonably decent face shield.
But your advice regarding scrubs in the OPD, any take home point regarding scrubs?
You see Dr. Meena, so the difference is I have not seen any patient today, so I'm in my street clothes. So all our staff change into scrubs like how Meena is, and they change into street clothes when they go in. So we are back to our school uniform day. So all doctors are wearing. It gives you a lot of time coming into work. Especially for us guys, we already are horrible selecting clothes. So you can happily come in wearing a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, change it to scrubs and get on. The only other thing we've started doing is carrying our ID cards. Where police stops us on the road, they know who we are.
So it better we'll wear a scrub in the OPD also.
And we discourage jewelry, we discourage wallets. So we enable GPay and UPI in our cafeteria. So even our colleagues, we encourage them if they're coming in vehicles to leave all this stuff there. So they minimize the amount of stuff that they wear. So I see some of your postgraduates wear their aprons. We'll stop use of aprons because again, we don't know how much of contamination. We insist everybody wear only half-sleeve clothes because that again allows you to effectively disinfect your hand. Optometrists are also discouraged to wear any aprons. So everybody is only in half sleeve. So if the uniform, so some of our staff used to be full sleeve, we insist that they roll it.
So Dr. Siddharam is here.
Yeah. Sir, use of PPE during surgery, intraoperative.
By whom, sir?
PPE, sir.
So that's what I said. So the PPE use is different for different people. It is a task specific. So the circulating staff will wear only a mask and a face shield. The assisting staff will wear a impermeable gown over which an autoclavable gown is used. The autoclavable gown we keep changing between cases. The outside autoclavable gown is the only one that we change. The surgeon again wears a fresh set of OT scrubs, a patterned shirt. They wear an impermeable gown On top of that, they wear an autoclavable gown that they change between cases. Our OT protocols always have been to double glove, so we continue that. Over and above the regular multi-layer mask that we are using, they put a surgical 3-ply mask. So, for example, you're wearing an N95. You're walking into the OT. The fear is saying, if I cough, will whatever germs that are there outside my N95 fall on the patient. To prevent that, you put a 3-ply mask on top of your N95. The only disadvantage of doing that is your ability to breathe comes down significantly. So make sure that your air conditioner is running, otherwise it's going to become very, very stuffy. And you may also want to put a micropore tape on top of the nose to prevent fogging, especially for the retinal surgeons. They otherwise find it very difficult with the bio. We also use a foot cover currently. Again, there is no science to why we use it, because we need to remember that COVID is a disease that spreads through a droplet infection. It is not an Ebola that is going to spread through your skin. All PPE coveralls, the CITRA standards or the DRDO standards, there is only one standard, which is meant for conditions like Ebola, which is why they insist on the CMC and the high velocity blood transfer and all of that. So you have to somewhere, I think, go back to being evidence-based rather than emotion-based. Understand why you're wearing a particular PPE. The mask is most critical. Aerosolization during phaco, there has been enough and more discussion. So currently what we do is we apply povidone iodine, leave it for 2 minutes before surgery so that the conjunctival cul-de-sac is pretty much sterilized. We do clean the eye before surgery. Only thing, earlier we used to attach a syringe nozzle and push it. Now we remove the needle, use the white bore and flush it out. And if you're flushing it out, we use the other hand to cover it so that there's no splash. During the surgery, they apply HPMC to prevent the cornea from drying out. I think the recent video that came from the Bristol Eye Institute shows that if you apply HPMC, the aerosolization is almost zero. So again, with phaco, during Rexus, you're putting enough visco. So whatever aqueous is there is anyway coming out. We've not proven that COVID is there in the aqueous humor. So there are a lot of unanswered questions that is creating unnecessary panic.
Any more queries?
Use of goggles, sir, during surgery and OPD.
So we found out to be very uncomfortable. So those like Dr. Meena who wear their regular refraction, wear their glasses during the surgery, because the surgical eyepiece, there is enough space between the patient and us. The patient anyway is wearing a mask, he's wearing a drape on top of that. So for his droplets to cross the mask, cross the drape, cross the surgical field, cross our mask and come in is actually very, very far-fetched. So if you have to get infected, then honestly it is real bad luck rather than a real possibility. During intubation, extubation, definitely yes, there is a risk. So currently we suggest only that the anesthetist and the GA assistant are there during intubation and extubation. So we move out of the room. Earlier we used to remain in the room until the entire process was done, but we wait outside. As soon as they've done that, we then walk in. In the OPD, again, wearing goggles and seeing is very, very difficult. It's easier said than done. It looks nice on photographs. We tried giving shields to our optometrists. They also struggle because the reflexes are not clearly seen. Goggles, again, the quality of the goggles that are available in India are very, very poor. To be very frank, good quality goggles are available only from China. Again, sourcing is an issue currently. Multiple startups are working on it. Maybe in another 1.5 months, we will have a better solution. So a slit lamp guard is actually good enough for all OPD procedures. Again, you can cut it off from acrylic sheet. It should not cost you more than 30 rupees to get it done. Otherwise, every medical company provider based on the brand of your slit lamp will give it to you free of cost. So if it is a Topcon, Mera Itech is providing it, Zeiss is providing it, Biomedics is providing it to you if it's a hard street. So reach out to the distributors, they will make it available to you. The AIOS guidelines is available. Again, it's a very broad guideline to allow most ophthalmic practices to adhere to. do reach out to us if you have any specific problem. We would be glad to share with you what we are doing. It may not be correct. Again, we can never guarantee that you will not get any COVID infection if you follow our protocols. Again, a lot of it is done in good faith. So beyond that, we have to, like I said, accept saying that as healthcare workers, we are at risk. So we signed up for it when we decided to do medicine, and we have to live with that truth.
Any more queries? It has been a fabulous interaction, sir. So though we are following most of the practices, but yes, this discussion will definitely refine the way we practice ophthalmology in the forthcoming days. Thanks to you, sir, and thanks to ma'am.